Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I have a review for you of this little guy. This is the Enigma Titanium Pocket Probe by Rat Bastard Tools. That's his name. I'm not just angry at the guy. And so first off, I want to thank that Rat Bastard for sending this guy to me. Actually, this was handed to me at Blade Show. I was walking around with Frankie and Bird, and Frankie and Bird knew him, and I think he figured out that I was Nick Shabazz, handed me the tool. And so he gave it to me. I told him it's going to be an honest review. He was cool with that. So thank you very much there, Rat Bastard, for giving me this. Sorry, that's still weird for me to say. But anyways, I've tried not to let that affect my review too much. Next thing, size comparison for this little guy. It's always a little bit strange to do size comparison. Of course, Spyderco delicacy. You see, this is not a tiny little tool. It's hard to tell sometimes with these little keychain tools, but it's a little bit up there. Right here is your Leatherman Wave. Here, I'll crunch it down there so you can see that. So again, this is not very small. This is a little bit longer than a Leatherman Wave, but certainly thinner and narrower there. Let's see here, a standard U.S. quarter. It's around here someplace. A Sharpie permanent marker, and let's see here, a random bottle cap. There you go. People always complain about random objects and size comparison, so damn it, I'm going to give it to you. Then finally, the material. This is a solid chunk of titanium with a screw in it. So there you go. Let's talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of your Rat Bastard Pocket Probe here. Okay, so on the good side, first off, I absolutely love the Rat Bastard logo here. It's kind of neat. It's got, you know, the little wrench up there. It's got a little, you know, this is just, it's a very neat kind of techno-esque logo, like in a post-apocalyptic snow crash sort of world. I can picture warring, you know, tribes of freaking cyborgs running around. This is one of their flags. So if there's ever a Rat Bastard cyborg union or something, boy, do they have a logo ready for them. So anyways, nice logo. Next thing, I love the fact that this actually does have tweezers. Tweezers is something I think a lot of people forget about in an everyday carry, but they're really useful. And when the time comes that you need tweezers, they're kind of something you need. You can't really replace them with something else. And so I like very much that. I mean, when you get a splinter, when you have a piece of wood, having actual tweezers that can actually get down there and can pinch a hair, that can pull a splinter, is really nice. It's something I appreciate very much. Next thing, I gotta say, I like the fact that you get two rulers on the side here. This guy over here is in inches. This little guy over here is in metric. Certainly, it's not going to be measuring great distances or anything like that, but it can be very helpful just to get a quick sense of it. And it's also a neat little trick that the rulers are cut with the jimping in the same position. So you can see here, this is millimeter jimping. This is, I guess, 1/8 of an inch jimping. Yeah, 1/8 of an inch jimping. So that's kind of neat. Appreciate that very much. Next thing, this does offer a cap lifter for opening bottles and whatnot, so that's solid, and it seems to work well. Next thing, I love the way that this is holding in the bit. A lot of pocket tools, like the Leatherman Piranha and whatnot, tend to have either bits that are, they're like held in by O-rings or weird awkwardness like that. But this guy is using a little tool bit that actually has a ball detent built into it, and that ball detent goes into a little hole that's been milled on the side here, which I think is a really great idea, because it means that you've got this tool wherever you'd like, and you can always use it and bust this guy out. But the thing is, when you need to get rid of it, or, well, not get rid of it, but put it away, all you got to do is just slide it in here. Come on. And then put it in, and then the bit is completely, there's nothing sticking out to the side of it. You can just slide this right into, say, a pocket in your bag, and it just stays there. There's nothing to snag. There are no O-rings to hang up. It's just, it is a great, very graceful little solution. If you want to use a bit that isn't this one with the ball detent, he does have a little hole for the O-rings if you need to bring that into your life. But unfortunately, well, I'm sorry, but fortunately, you don't need that by default. So I like very much that approach. I think it's a great idea, and it's a very slick little system. Next thing, I gotta say, the finishing on the knife, it's not a knife, it's a pocket tool. A lot of knives. But anyways, the finishing is pretty good. You can see there are nice chamfers all around. Chamfers here, chamfers here. This is something where, even though there are a lot of angles on it, it is pretty, it feels pretty good in the hand. It's not super unpleasant to grip and whatnot. So the finishing is nice. The chamfering is nice. Even the finish on the top of the titanium is pretty decent. You can see water jet marks and whatnot, but hey, Works out okay. And then finally, I gotta say, it's pretty cool looking. You know, you take this out and people look at you like, what the heck is that? And, you know, it's got an alien aesthetic to it, you know, from the Techno Rat Bastard Union or something like that. But it's pretty neat in that way. So at least to me, that all is what is good. It's pretty cool looking. It's got nice finishing, chamfering overall, captive bit, nice cap lifter on the side of it. It's got rulers on the side, and I love the fact that it has tweezers, and the logo is pretty excellent. Let's talk about what's great here. At least what's great about this guy is that this is a great little pry bar. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's no Medford Praetorian. Sorry, bad joke. But this is really a great pry bar because a lot of pry bars tend to be relatively thin throughout. And so as a result, like, okay, this is the little Gerber shard right here. And this is a very thin pry bar and has a tendency to kind of puncture things. Whereas this guy has a nice thick surface. So I found myself very often using this guy, for instance, to pop open a plastic casing on some electronics or something. We can kind of push it in there and then start to twist. But because there's chamfering here, it's soft, it doesn't have a tendency to like just push a little divot into the plastic. It tends to actually pop things open. It's also very nice to have that actual ramp here. I mean, this goes to a pretty good thickness, which means that you can often pry something apart just by setting it down and then pushing. And then it'll separate things. And that works really nicely. Again, you're not having to do twisting prying. You're just able to slide it in there. And so this is, to me, a great pry bar. And I very much enjoyed having it around, even just on my desk for disassemblies and things like that. It's gotten a lot of use, and it feels like a much better pry bar than some of the other stuff on the market. So to me, at least, that's what's great, the pry bar action. Let's talk about what's bad. So on the bad side, first off, Rat Bastard Tools. Goodbye, YouTube advertising monetization. Just saying that a couple of times, it's over with. So it's an interesting name. I enjoy it, but yeah, it's going to be tough. Next thing, Pocket Probe is the name of this guy. And so I'm talking about a Rat Bastard Pocket Probe. That's almost as bad as Pocket Pecker, let's just be real here. Not a big deal, though. Next thing, unfortunately, this guy does not have any kind of bolt moving capabilities. Like, for instance, on your Leatherman Piranha, some other your pocket tools that have sort of a cutout area for bolts that are getting larger and larger. This lacks that, and considering that's one of the things that's very often missing from a Leatherman style thing, although you got the pliers, that is something I did miss a little bit on this guy, and makes me have to carry something else. I get it, couldn't have done otherwise, but still. It is not a super space efficient tool. I mean, it's relatively thick, and again, makes sense, especially with this pry bar on there, but there's also a whole bunch of space in here that's not really doing anything. So if you're really trying to keep your everyday carry compact, this guy might not be the best choice for you. Next thing, getting at the bit can be a little bit tricky because you kind of have to do this thing where you try and rotate it out of there and then, come on now, rotate it out of there. That gives you enough space to then pop it out of there, and then you mount it within the hole here. And you have to do it from one side, and then it works, and you've got plenty of leverage on the bit and whatnot. But it's not an incredible process, as is getting this seated back in there. I imagine that after I used it for years and years, that would loosen up a little bit more, but as it stands, a little bit awkward. Next thing, the tweezers absolutely have some serious spring tension. Holy crap. These require a lot more pinch-a-tube than your normal everyday kind of tweezers. These are pretty hardcore at the spring. So although they're absolutely very functional as tweezers, you're going to be getting a little bit of a workout using them. Next thing, this guy is not exactly a great pocket tool because it is a little bit pokey in places. The tips of the pry bar, this little guy here, these little guys up here, especially the tips of the tweezers. And frankly, you don't necessarily want your tweezer tips hitting your keys every 2 seconds. It's not necessarily a great approach. And by the way, a little detail, this is ground at a slight angle, which allows you to be a little bit oblique to whatever you're grabbing. Nice little deal. But anyways, this is a little bit sharp, and so carrying this guy in the pocket is not a super comfortable proposition. This is something I prefer keeping in a little everyday carry sort of case or pouch thing, in like your pack or something. Then finally, on the bad side, bordering on the ugly, is the price. This is a $65 little tool here, and given it is hand-finished, it is made in the USA, it's chunk of titanium, and it is pretty unique. I don't know of anybody else who's making something like this, but that's a lot of money, and especially for a little pry bar. So sort of tool, that's something that you really have to love everyday carry tools and want to really buy quality and support artisans in order to pay. So that's a good chunk of change, 65 bucks. And so to me, at least, that's what's bad, is that the price on this guy is absolutely high, although that could well be what it costs him to make it. It is seriously pokey in the pocket. The tweezers have pretty serious spring tension. Getting at the bit here, pretty tricky. It's not super space efficient, doesn't have the ability to work with nuts or bolts like some other of these pocket tools. And the Rat Bastard Pocket Probe is, well, not something you're going to want to name in good company. Let's put it that way. Ugly side, there's nothing super ugly. The price is borderline. But anyways, let's go into your final conclusion. Look, final conclusion, this is probably my favorite little pocket tool that I've tried. I say that for a few reasons, but the big one for me is that it is a nice little multitasker because it combines a good pair of tweezers that actually function well as tweezers with a workable screwdriver, a solid cap lifter, which is nice to use, a very excellent pry bar, and it really is good. I've tried a bunch of those, and this is the only one I'm passionate about for prying things, and it is pretty well made too, which is something I appreciate. Mind you, it's not super well suited to the pocket. Even if they call it the Pocket Probe, it's a little pokey for your pocket there in the probing department. And you may have other tools that already fill these niches. I mean, you've probably got a better screwdriver with your Leatherman. You can, you'll have a cap lifter and whatnot, and so only you're going to know whether this actually makes sense in terms of adding additional functionality, and it is a very pricey little chunk of titanium. But the thing is, if you're after something that's relatively small, it's very nicely made, and it is really great for both prying and tweezing, then I think this little guy is absolutely going to be a gem for you, and I think you should probe a little deeper into picking one of these guys up. So there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, that I didn't say rat bastard too often to get demonetized, that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.